Hi BookTube, this is Lindsay from Lindsay Reads, and this is my cat Winnie. She decided to join us today. I thought you'd like to see her, so I didn't push her off. I'm here today to do a tag. It's the 52 Nifty Bookish Cues tag, and it was created by Strip Cover Lit. I was tagged by Shay and Becky Ford, and I will leave a link to their channels in the description below. So let's get into the questions. Number 1. What book are you reading right now? I'm reading The City of Bones by Cassandra Clare. Number 2. What was the last thing you highlighted? It probably would have been something in high school or college, like when you're forced to do it, because I don't highlight in my books. Number 3. What do you plan to read next? The Library Book by Susan Orlean, I think was her name. Number 4. One fiction writer, living or dead, with which I would like to grab a drink. I'm just going to go with my last, my favorite fiction book of 2018, and that was Ohio by Stephen Markley, so I'll go with him. Number 5, one fiction writer, living or dead, with which I would like to grab a drink. I couldn't go with one, I had to go with 2. I would go with Bruce Catton, who wrote the really good Civil War trilogies and books. And I would also go with William T. Vollmann. I read his Carbon Ideology books last year, and just the way he wrote those books was so interesting. So either one of those two, I would be happy to talk with. Number 6, one poet, living or dead, with which I would like to grab a drink. I don't read a lot of poetry, so I'm just going to go again with the last poet I read, which is Christian Wyman. His poems were very interesting and thought-provoking. Number 7, one booktuber with which I would like to grab a drink. Well, I'm not much of a drinker, but I see on BookTube Sean from Sean the Book Maniac. He always has like a drink in his hand, and so I'll go with him. Number 8, Emily Dickinson or Edgar Allan Poe. Emily Dickinson. Number 9, Hemingway or Fitzgerald. Fitzgerald. Number 10, Jane Austen or Charles Dickens. Jane Austen. Number 11, Harris or Hitchens. I'm not familiar with Harris. For Hitchens, I read his Mortality book. I haven't read his Christian books, but the Mortality book was about his dealing with cancer. So I'll go with Hitchens just because that's the one I've read. Number 12, Stephen King or Michael Crichton. And again, I've only read Stephen King. I haven't read anything by Michael Crichton. So, sorry, cat hair. I'll go with King. 13, Bret Easton Ellis or Chuck Palahniuk. Neither. I don't really have a preference. I haven't read either one of them. 14, Kurt Vonnegut or John Green. I've only read Vonnegut's Slaughterhouse 5. I haven't read anything by John Green. I know he's kind of popular, but I haven't picked him up. So I'll go with Vonnegut. 15, Shakespeare's poems or plays. I'm going to go with plays. I've always wanted to see his plays live. So yeah, for sure the plays. 16, Adrian Ford or Dalton Gentry. I think it would depend on the situation. If I want to get some work done, for sure I'll go with Adrian. If I want to have some fun, Dalton. 17, Cormac McCarthy or J.K. Rowling. I'm not sure what these two are doing together in this question. Cormac McCarthy, I've read 3 or 4 of his books. I know the road has been going around with different opinions. And J.K. Rowling, I've only read the Harry Potter series. Just by the volume of which author I read the most of, J.K. Rowling. Hannibal Lecter or Voldemort. I haven't read or seen the movies about Hannibal Lecter, but from what I have heard, she's like a pretty scary person, so I'm going to go with Hannibal Lecter. 19, T.C. Boyle or George Saunders. I read 2 books by T.C. Boyle. I can't remember what the first one was called, but the second one I read was Talk Talk, which had a deaf character in it, which is why deaf main character in it. So which is why I picked it up, because my boyfriend's deaf. But George Saunders, I've read I think 3 or 4 of his short story collections, and they are just phenomenal. I really like them, and so I'm going to go with Saunders. 20, good writing or good story. Good story. 21, YA or children's lit. Children's lit. Irony or humor. Humor. 23, sci-fi or horror. Sci-fi. 24, fantasy or nonfiction. I'm not sure what these two are doing in comparison with each other, because nonfiction includes so many different categories. Nonfiction I wouldn't really consider a genre. I really like fantasy, but I have to go with nonfiction. 25. Rather find a new favorite contemporary writer or a new favorite old-time great. New favorite contemporary writer. Just because it would be fun to see what they come up with next, like follow their journey through their writing career. 26. Sonnet or haiku? Sonnet. 27. Sestina or villanelle? I don't have a preference. 28. Spend the evening at a library or a bookstore. I'm going to go with the library just because that evening won't cost me anything. No one's going to approach me to sell me anything, and I can just take my time browsing all the books at a quiet space. 29. Magazine or Wikipedia article? Wikipedia article. 30. Dictionary or encyclopedia? Dictionary. 31. The writer I would like to write my biography. I'm going to go with the last really good biography I read, which is Zelda by Nancy Milford. My life is not as crazy as Zelda's, but it was a really well-written biography, so I'll go with her. 32. I do or do not highlight in my books. I don't. 33. I do or do not write in my books. I try to. I read primarily on the Kindle, and so like the keyboard when you're typing in, it's kind of slow because I read on like a Kindle Paperwhite, but I do write a little bit. I'd like to write more. 34. Earliest memory of a library. My parents didn't really take me to the library as a kid. My grandparents did over the summers when I was like 7 or 8, so other than the elementary school libraries, which I attended, I can't remember my earliest memory of going to a library, but I'll go with, I guess I would choose elementary school libraries as a kid, like first grade. So 35. Last time you went to the library? Last week. 36. Have you ever stolen or accidentally stolen books from the library? No. I'm a good little girl who always returned in her books. 37. Ballpark. How many books do you own? Well, I'm a weird one on BookTube because I think I only own like 10 books. I used to own like hundreds and hundreds of books, but I've moved around so much where it was so hard and just aggravating to carry these boxes and boxes of books, like apartment to apartment. And with a Kindle, they all can fit in my hand, so I just went with the Kindle. So yeah, probably like 10 books. 38. How many books do you think would make for a reasonable personal library? Maybe like 1,000? Is that reasonable? 39. So there's Sense and Sensibilities and Sea Monsters, Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, etc. How do you feel about the phenomenon? I think I haven't read any of these books, but I think anything that makes people pick up either these books or the classics that inspired them is a really good thing. So I'm all for that. 40. Horror trope you would like to get more love. I don't read a lot of horror, but something I like reading in horror is like the creepy next door neighbor that moves in. You know, you're in your nice safe neighborhood, and then these like weird people move in, and you know, it's all suspicious. What are they doing? I like reading something like that. So maybe that one. 41. Something you think gets underutilized in sci-fi. This is a question I think like the SFF community would be really good to hear from them, because I read sci-fi but not a ton, but I would choose like earthbound sci-fi maybe. I know like sci-fi, when I think of sci-fi I think of like space operas, so I'll think sci-fi books set on this planet Earth. 42. Flash fiction, form and format of literature, or it's just a short story dummy. I would go with neither. When I think of, I've read a couple flash fictions, but to me, they just seem like an idea for a story rather than an actual story. 43. If you could own one book from all of history, what would it be? I actually can't really think of any. I'm happy to get any and all the books I can that's available. I really can't think of anything that that is like missing, because I mean I know there's books missing you know, from history, but I think that's just part of you know, time, you know, what goes on. So you know, some books are misplaced, some books, you know, we have kept and read as the time goes on. So yeah, I don't really have a preference. 44. Sorry, cat hair again. Oh, maybe she's a very fluffy cat. 44, audiobooks. The same as reading. I do read audiobooks, primarily at work or when I'm walking my dog. And I thoroughly enjoy the audiobook time. But for me personally, I don't consider it the same exact as reading. I do consider it, you know, as, I don't know what the word, how would you call it? I do consider it reading a book and, you know, attaining that knowledge, the plot line, the characters of the book, yes. But do I consider it the same exact format of reading? No. It's two different things for me, if that makes sense. I could probably make a whole video on like what I think of audiobooks. 45, most literary songwriter of your lifetime. I'm not really a big person into music. I'll listen, you know, if I'm going into a store and they have music playing, but I don't have an answer for that. 46, what writer embarrasses you the most because you haven't read them? I wouldn't say embarrasses me, but some authors I really want to read more of would be like the classics, like the ancient classics, like Plato, Aristotle, you know, Sophocles, you know, those writers I really want to pick up. 47, what writer embarrasses you because you've read too much from them? Well, as a kid, I read a lot of mystery books, and you know, I didn't have the internet, and so it's hard for me to, you know, search around for different books to read. So if I found an author I liked, I would just like read everything I could from them. And so I read everything by Phyllis A. Whitney and Mary Higgins Clark as a kid. You know, anything I could see on the shelves, I would pick up. So I probably read almost every single thing from the time of me reading it to you know, the most recent books at that time. But I wouldn't say they embarrass me. It's just those are the two that I've read the most from because that's what, you know, I chose to read, but they didn't embarrass me. I think anything that, you know, gets people reading is good. You shouldn't be embarrassed by that. 48. What is a biography you are looking forward to reading? I'm currently in the middle of 2 biographies that I got from the library, but then they had to be taken back. And so I'm waiting to finish them. It's the new book about Frederick Douglass. I can't remember the author's name. And then the new biography of Reagan. Those 2 books I'm right in the middle of. But I'm waiting for the whole to get back to me. So those 2 books. 49. Do you have a dream reading cubby? No, I don't. Because I don't own, like, you know, a lot of books, so I don't need to be surrounded by them. The Kindle and a nice comfy chair and some good lighting is all I need, and a fluffy cat to sit and keep my lap warm. 50. Last literary phenomenon that really got your gears grinding. I'm not really like easy to anger or easy to like get aggravated by something. But I know something that was going around and maybe still going around that I'm just finding like kind of maybe silly to me is like the whole what do you call them? Like declutter your life and you know, keep everything very, very minimal. And like, so I heard something about how like, you know, ripping the pages out of the book and keeping just the quotes that you care for, something like that was going around, and I think that's a little bit, it doesn't really suit my life at least, but maybe it suits others, I don't know. Let's see. 51. What was the last piece of literature that changed the way you read? I wouldn't say anything's changed the way I read. I've always like loved literature. There's nothing that's really, you know, brought me into a different way of reading. The only thing I think of is like I started listening to audiobooks like maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I started with Gone Girl, and then from then on I listened to audiobooks, because before that I had tried reading audiobooks just from like what was free on like the apps, like the classic books, you know, like I was listening to like Jane Austen and Charles Dickens, talking about these 2. And these questions, you know, I tried listening to those, and they were kind of hard to grasp from the audiobooks, especially because the narrators were like these like random people. It was a free audiobook, so it wasn't like a professional narrator. So I would say Gone Girl, because that was the first like professional narrator that I'd listened to for a book. Okay, let's see. And the last question, 52. What booktuber have you been watching the most recently? And just because like this guy is like a machine, like he's popping out videos left and right. It's hard to keep up. I would say Steve Donahue. He is like the king of booktube. He's constantly has like 2 or 3 videos a day, and so just by him alone, you know, you could get your video watching time in easily. So that's the tag. I'm not going to tag anyone because I've seen a lot of people doing this tag. But if you haven't done it and this sounds interesting to you, feel free to do it. Thank you. See you soon, BookTube.